What is up, my guys and geeks? As you all know, I love Harry Potter. And within the Harry Potter universe, there is a vast number of different villains who weave in and out of the story and affect Harry's life in a number of ways.
Poor, stuttering Professor Quirrell.
Mr. Potter.
But if you don't mind me saying, it was pretty obvious what you're about to do.
Detention, Mr. Potter!
And one of my favorite villains of all time has to be Barty Crouch Jr.
I'll show you mine if you show me yours.
Just because of his ability to deceive everyone around him, including Dumbledore, and how he was able to carry out his part of the plan to perfection. It's only Voldemort's failure to kill Harry that led to him being exposed and their plan ultimately failing. But we all know that Barty Crouch Jr. would have had a much bigger role in the series if his time hadn't been cut short by him receiving the Dementor's kiss. Which is why today I decided to jump in and find out what would happen if Barty Crouch Jr. had never gotten the Dementor's kiss. Alright, if you go on to enjoy this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that notifications bell for the next awesome video I upload. And be sure to comment down below what you think would happen if Barty Crouch Jr. never got the Dementor's kiss. Recap, Barty Crouch Jr. is captured at the end of Goblet of Fire after Harry returns from the graveyard through the portkey with Cedric's dead body.
Voldemort's back!
Barty, who's still disguised as Alastor Moody, takes Harry away and begins questioning him, and Harry realizes that this is not the real Mad-Eye Moody and is quickly saved by Dumbledore, Snape, and McGonagall.
Are you Alastor Moody? Are you? No.
Moody, or Barty Crouch Jr., is then subjected to Veritas Serum and reveals the truth of his plan to Dumbledore and the others, and is then locked in one of the Hogwarts towers while they wait for the Minister of Magic to arrive. Cornelius Fudge arrives again, and as usual, he's so nervous that he's brought a Dementor along with him. However, this time Dumbledore forbids Fudge from bringing a Dementor into the castle with him. And while Fudge does not believe Crouch's story about Voldemort actually being back any more so than he does when Harry tells him that he saw Voldemort return,
He's not back.
he does ultimately agree to Dumbledore's insistence that they take Barty Crouch Jr. to Azkaban instead of giving him the Dementor's kiss. After this, not much changes about the story until we reach the Order of the Phoenix, where when Voldemort goes to break out his Death Eaters from Azkaban, it is 11 Death Eaters that join his ranks, as Barty Crouch Jr. is among their numbers. And Barty is special compared to the other Death Eaters because he's had much more recent access to Harry Potter and to some extent may even know Harry better than Snape does, since Mad-Eye Moody, or Barty Crouch Jr., was actually close to Harry, whereas Snape and Harry absolutely despise each other.
Alastor Moody.
And there's also the added detail of Barty Crouch Jr. not being a double agent working for Dumbledore. So he just freely tells Voldemort absolutely everything, and him and Voldemort end up coming up with the idea to use the mind link between Voldemort and Harry to lure Harry to the Hall of Prophecies.
Hermione, serious.
Now, once Harry and his friends arrive at the Hall of Prophecies, they're ambushed by the same group of Death Eaters, plus Barty Crouch Jr., which at first doesn't seem to impact much of the story. Harry and his friends still get separated, and Harry still ends up in the Veil Room, where they're surrounded by Death Eaters, and the Order of the Phoenix still arrives.
Get away from my godson.
However, this time when the Order arrives, Mad-Eye Moody immediately begins to confront Barty Crouch Jr., the man who kidnapped him, imprisoned him, and took on his identity for an entire year. Now, as with the usual story of the Battle of the Department of Mysteries, Mad-Eye Moody is immediately taken down. But whereas Bellatrix was occupied in the original story and didn't have time to finish Mad-Eye off, I think this time with the increase in numbers, Barty Crouch Jr. is able to not only defeat, but also kill Mad-Eye Moody.
Mad-Eye's dead.
After that, events still play out. The same Sirius still dies at Bellatrix's hands. The rest of the Death Eaters are captured as Bellatrix escapes, and Lord Voldemort is revealed publicly to be back right in front of Fudge and the rest of the Ministry.
He's back.
After this, not much changes in the story again until the next time that we see the Death Eaters who are captured in the Battle of the Department of Mysteries, which is in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows at Malfoy Manor, when it appears that Voldemort has been able to perform yet another prison break and regain his followers. And while Barty Crouch Jr. has taken a couple of reputation points because he failed to get the prophecy, him being able to kill Mad-Eye Moody, and the fact that no matter what reality we're in, it was still Lucius who is in charge of the mission, means that he's not quite as much in the doghouse as Lucius usually is after the Battle of the Department of Mysteries. So, of course, during the meeting at Malfoy Manor is when Snape informs Voldemort about when Harry Potter is going to be leaving number 4 Privet Drive, and, of course, Barty Crouch Jr. goes with the rest of the Death Eaters to try to track down Harry. Now, usually, this is where Mad-Eye Moody dies, because Voldemort comes in and he attempts to track down the most powerful wizard, assuming that the most powerful or most powerful wizard will be the one who they sent with Harry. But this time, Mad-Eye's not there, and neither is Mundungus for that matter. He suggested the plan, but just didn't end up coming along because they had nobody to provide security for him, and he was too much of a liability. So this time, Voldemort ends up going after Kingsley Shacklebolt.
Dumbledore's got style.
And unfortunately, Voldemort is yet again able to kill Kingsley, whose partner, the fake Potter that he's protecting, is actually Hermione. So in this version of the story, Hermione is captured by the Death Eaters after Voldemort kills Kingsley and realizes that this is not the real Harry. He's drawn away before he can finish off Hermione by Barty Crouch Jr., who has recognized Hedwig to be a real owl in the real Harry's cage, but Hermione is still captured, and so the Order of the Phoenix, when they regroup, begin to prepare for a rescue mission. Bill and Fleur's wedding is delayed, and Harry doesn't learn as much about Dumbledore's backstory and hear as much of the gossip from Muriel Weasley as he usually does, but still Voldemort and his Death Eaters still overtake the Ministry of Magic within the same time frame.
The Ministry has fallen. The Minister of Magic is dead.
And as per usual, the Death Eaters arrive at the burrow to attack, but this time without Kingsley to give advance notice. The Order of the Phoenix is much more ambushed, and while Ron and Harry barely manage to escape, Remus Lupin ends up sacrificing himself to protect Tonks, who attempts to go after Barty Crouch Jr. for killing her mentor, Mad-Eye Moody, and is nearly defeated because she's not in as much practice due to being pregnant and having been out of action for a little while. But Remus sacrifices himself to save her, and the other members of the Order of the Phoenix end up fighting off the Death Eaters and getting away.
And Remus, your son.
Now Ron and Harry are left without Hermione and without much of the protection that they usually have when they go on the quest for the Horcruxes. And at first it seems as though they're just going to have to try to track down the Horcruxes without Hermione, since they can't risk going back to the Order of the Phoenix and trying to mount another rescue mission. But this is where the Deluminator comes into play, because Hermione ends up, while in captivity at Malfoy Manor, saying Ron's name, and Ron and Harry are able to know to go to Malfoy Manor because of the Deluminator sending Ron straight to Hermione. So the trio are able to escape from Malfoy Manor barely due to the same ability of Dobby helping them get out.
Of course, I'm an elf.
And they're able to rescue the current captives, which include Hermione and Ollivander. But this time, they are much earlier in the timeline than they usually are when they go to Malfoy Manor, meaning that Luna, Dean, and Griphook all are not there yet, meaning that they do get captured later on, but unfortunately the Golden Trio is not there to rescue them, and they stay there for the rest of the time of the Deathly Hallows. Now, unfortunately, Dobby does still die as they barely manage to escape Bellatrix and the Malfoys, and of course, in this version of events, while the Golden Trio has not tracked down the locket or Hufflepuff's cup, they do have Ollivander. So they're able to interrogate Ollivander and question him, and they eventually find out that Voldemort is after the Elder Wand. And they find out that Voldemort has been searching for the Elder Wand ever since his and Harry's wands crossed streams and the golden flames were emitted in the Battle of the Seven Potters. But this leaves the trio in a bit of an interesting place because by this point they don't have any of the Horcruxes that they've usually captured at this point, nor do they have the Sword of Gryffindor for that matter. But the Golden Trio still ends up thinking to go to Grimmauld Place after they drop Ollivander off at Bill's place in Shell Cottage. They consider staying there for a time, but since they're not as focused and purpose-driven this time, they decide that it's safer for Bill and Fleur and Ollivander if the trio goes their own way. So they go off to Grimmauld Place and end up thinking to summon Creature, who ends up telling them the same story he usually does in the main timeline about the locket. And they end up tracking down Mundungus, infiltrating the Ministry, and that part of the story goes pretty much as per usual. They get the locket, barely manage to escape, but lose Grimmauld Place because Yaxley hangs on at the end.
You're lying, Dolores. Mustn't tell lies.
Ultimately, after they steal the locket from the Ministry, the trio then tries to figure out their next steps. And Hermione manages to recall that she once managed to get Peter Pettigrew to slip up during her time in captivity. And he admitted that Bellatrix Lestrange was keeping some things in her vault for Lord Voldemort. And the trio deduces that since Lucius Malfoy was entrusted with a Horcrux after Voldemort's downfall, it's quite likely that Bellatrix was also entrusted with a Horcrux at some point.
Well, let us hope that Mr. Potter will always be around to save the day.
So this time the Golden Trio prepares to break into Gringotts, but this time they're actually a bit smarter than usual and decide to just transfigure Hermione and Ron and get into Gringotts without trying to specifically impersonate Bellatrix Lestrange. And so they go in, but this time they encounter less complications since they aren't recognized by the Death Eater Travers, who usually recognizes who he thinks is Bellatrix and tags along. The trio still manages to Imperius the Goblin, who's taking their order, and they trick him into bringing them down to the vault, where they do manage to successfully locate Hufflepuff's cup, which Harry already knows about due to seeing into Voldemort's memories back in the Half-Blood Prince. From here, as per usual, Voldemort realizes that the Golden Trio are hunting Horcruxes, and Harry sees into his mind and knows that the final Horcrux is at Hogwarts. So the trio goes to Hogwarts, and as per usual, they are let in through the tunnel into the Room of Requirement, and they end up preparing for the final fight.
How dare you stand where he stood?
As everybody prepares for the Battle of Hogwarts, Ron and Hermione go down to the Chamber of Secrets to destroy the Horcruxes, which this time include the locket and Hufflepuff's cup, as Harry searches for Ravenclaw's diadem. Ron, as per usual, is able to get into the Chamber of Secrets by remembering Parseltongue that Harry does in his sleep. And Ron, ever the wizard's chess strategist, is actually able to deduce this time that they need to make an opening move in order to get into the locket. And he commands it to open in Parseltongue, and it does, and they're able to destroy it with a Basilisk Fang. Now, Ron does see the same nightmarish apparition as he saw in the normal timeline, but this time Hermione's there to help him snap out of it, and Ron eventually overcomes his fear, destroys the locket, and the two of them share a kiss.
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
Now, after this, Ron and Hermione rejoin Harry with several Basilisk Fangs so they can finish the hunt for Ravenclaw's diadem. And when they go to the Room of Requirement, they are, as per usual, ambushed by Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle. But this time, Barty Crouch Jr., who knows Harry and the trio very well and better than most Death Eaters, is also able to deduce out where they might be headed and follows them and manages to ambush them. As per usual, Crabbe casts Fiend Fire and destroys the diadem, but also dies himself.
Goyle, set the bloody place on fire!
And everybody gets out of the room. Malfoy and Goyle collapse in a heap as per usual, and the trio begins to duel Barty Crouch Jr. until they're distracted by the explosion of the wall that kills Fred Weasley. The same as in the normal timeline, Fred still dies with the etch of his last laugh still on his face. But this time the Golden Trio wasn't right there when it happened. They were nearby and distracted by the explosion, which allowed Barty Crouch Jr. to slip away undetected.
You okay, Freddy?
Nope, no chance. He's dead.
Meanwhile, the Battle of Hogwarts is raging all around them, but in this timeline, Tonks never shows up to the battle and instead stays with Teddy, since the only reason she came in the original timeline was to help back up Lupin. So Bellatrix, who doesn't have her cousin to go after like in the normal timeline, ends up going after her old professor, and in her mind, the traitorous Slytherin Horace Slughorn, who unfortunately ends up falling to Bellatrix. Everything else goes the same. Harry sees into Voldemort's mind. The trio sneaks down to the Shrieking Shack, manages to get Snape's memories just before he dies, and Harry understands the truth. Harry then goes into the forest and sacrifices himself. He still has the Resurrection Stone because all of Dumbledore's will carries out the same way as previous. And Harry sacrifices himself and is able to return to life. Narcissa Malfoy lies to Voldemort and claims that Harry is dead, and he is carried back to Hogwarts.
Harry Potter is dead.
Harry Potter is dead!
At this point, Voldemort marches in with his army and announces that Harry Potter is dead to a shocked and grieving crowd, which inexplicably in this version of events includes Lavender Brown, who thought to duck and was missed by Fenrir Greyback in his final attack. Yes, Lavender Brown does survive this version of events. I can't explain why, but she goes on to live a happy life with some other random guy who doesn't mind giant gold necklaces that say "my sweetheart." Everything goes the same. Neville destroys Nagini with the Sword of Gryffindor, which he pulls out of the hat, and the final fight continues as per usual, but this time Barty Crouch Jr. is still there, and he, as one of Voldemort's most loyal followers, stays alongside Bellatrix to duel to the end. So in this version of events, it's actually Barty Crouch Jr. who's dueling Luna, Hermione, and Ginny, nearly kills Ginny, and then is defeated by Molly Weasley.
Not my daughter, you...
Hey, Barty Crouch! Junior.
Meanwhile, Bellatrix is actually taken down by Neville Longbottom, who manages to get vengeance for his parents being tortured into insanity by Bellatrix many, many years ago.
Neville Longbottom, is it? How's Mum and Dad?
Better now they're about to be avenged.
Gotta say, this version of events, Neville and Lavender are turning out to have surprisingly much better lives. I did not expect that when Barty Crouch Jr. survived the Dementor's kiss. But anyway, the story turns out the same as usual. Voldemort is defeated by his own foolishness and failure to be able to comprehend love. But in the aftermath of the final battle, two important details change. First, Neville's just awarded a chocolate frog card, the same as the rest of the Golden Trio. This time, not only did he destroy one of Voldemort's final Horcruxes, but he also was able to take down Bellatrix Lestrange, so I feel like he's deserved a pat on the back and a nice chocolate frog card. And obviously, Kingsley Shacklebolt, who's usually made the next Minister for Magic, is dead. So I like to think in this version of events, Arthur Weasley goes on to become the next Minister for Magic.
Daddy's back.
And he greatly reduces the amount of anti-Muggle and anti-Muggle-born bias within the wizarding world before he's eventually succeeded by Hermione many years down the line. But alright, that's what I think happens if Barty Crouch Jr. never got the Dementor's kiss. Honestly, I'm surprised that so many things went slightly different, but yet the outcome ended up the exact same. Be sure to let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you think that this is what would have happened if Barty Crouch Jr. was able to escape the Dementor's kiss in the Goblet of Fire? If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that notifications bell for the next awesome video I upload. If you want to see the truth behind the Elder Wand, you can click on this side of the screen. And if you want to find out why Harry Potter and Percy Jackson are actually in the same universe, you can click on this side of the screen. But you've only got 3 seconds because this video is about to end. Adios!